So, that's a bit high view, isn't it? We won't worry too much. Madam Chairman, fellow speakers and guests, this is an evaluation for an A4 speech, which is about gestures and body language, which I demonstrated a little bit about as I was coming down. This speaker had an interesting title, Moderation in Education, and I think probably we were all expecting some form of discourse about education in the UK, but in fact it turned into be a battle between East and West, and to get that Eastern perspective on education, which is quite interesting. So it was informative from that point of view, although it may just have been a personal opinion, but it's an opinion nevertheless, which when delivered in a speech does invite people to engage and to form their own opinion and to maybe feel challenged or to challenge. So from that point of view, the speech and the subject was a good speech. The way that the speaker had to perform, if you like, was in a very different way because of the subject title to the previous speech, which was quite an emotional, personal speech. Her speech was in a way quite, what you might say, dry, and there was no way she was going to be able to compete with that. And this was a good chance, good opportunity to say, okay, I've got a hard act to follow. It's not my fault, anybody's fault. I've got this subject to deliver, and I'm going to deliver it in the best way that I possibly can. And this will happen out in life, out in your work situation, depending on what you're doing, but you could follow somebody for whatever reason and who has done a very different type of speech to you and engaged with the audience in a very different way. And you can't really say, oh, well, this is not, probably that good. Don't listen to me, and, whatever you're thinking, you've got to go, bang, listen to me. Mine is just as good, but it's different. And so it's a good opportunity to just pull yourself together. And I think the speaker did actually gather herself before she spoke. She realised she'd forgotten, or was about to forget the salutation, but then gathered herself. So that was really good, to just come back to herself and say, right, I'm going to do this in the way that I know best. So we were looking for gestures and body language. And there were natural gestures. We talk about people speaking with their hands and emphasising what they're doing. So I would say the speaker was using her hands in a natural way, but not in a way that she was using them to emphasise a point in her speech. So she could have said, we're talking about the East and we're talking about the West, and the highs and the lows. We had a little tentative gesture about having people in the back pocket, but that could have been made much bigger. We could also, we're looking for meaning what you say, incorporating the level 3. And whilst the words, perhaps, said, yes, I really mean what I'm saying here, the physical gestures and the body language didn't really emphasise that point. The speaker used eye contact well. She engaged the audience, and there was good use of notes because they weren't obtrusive at all. I felt it was a bit of a difficult subject in order to portray what was needed, and that was gestures and body language. So I'm not going to recommend that this speaker moves on to her A5. because whilst it was an interesting speech and there was a good beginning, middle and end, it didn't, to me, fulfil the requirements of that level, which was to use gestures and body language to enhance and really help to deliver the speech. You almost have to choose your subject according to what the level is. And it was, I think, quite difficult to incorporate large body gestures and hand gestures into a subject that was about education. It was interesting, and there was a good conclusion, and it was an interesting perspective to see that there, perhaps might be a difference between East and West. And the conclusion left us really with a question in our own minds, and which is best, East or West? And in order to get the best from both worlds, you need moderation. And that left us with, well, there's a good debate here, perhaps. So I'll say it was a difficult subject, I think, to show that, whilst speech itself was quite good. So a natural use of some hand gestures, good confidence, poise. There was a bit of the old praying. I don't know if that was what she was really doing, or if that becomes part of her gestures. But the hands, gosh, we all need to cut our hands off, don't we? Because we really don't know what to do with them. But we have to control our hands. And what I noticed was what beautiful fingernails the speaker had, because all the time I could see these hands and these fingers, and that was sort of taken away a little bit from what I was listening to. So I would say well done, but in order to fulfill the requirements of this particular level, I would ask you to do that again.